in Brussels. At home, the Prime Minister is preparing to curb the powers of the House of Lords after it blocked the government's plans to cut tax credits. A review will say peers should lose their absolute veto over laws known as secondary legislation. Labour says the reform is a massive overreaction to the government defeat. Let's talk about this with our political correspondent, Chris Mason, who's in Westminster. And Chris, there is a danger, isn't there, that this will be seen as a rather rushed response to that tax credits defeat rather than a well-considered, well-thought-out plan?
Yeah, we've been hearing just that kind of scepticism from some Labour peers in the House of Lords in the last half hour or so as this report has been published, and Tina Stoll, Lady Stoll, the leader of the House of Lords, has been on her feet in the chamber there. There is a danger with this kind of conversation about the Constitution and the House of Lords and its powers, that it all gets a bit turgid and heavy going. So a quick explanation about what this all boils down to. There's what's known as primary legislation. They are acts of Parliament. As things stand, when they are making their way through the Commons and the Lords, they ping-pong between the two. House of Lords acts as a revising chamber, the House of Commons has the real power. With secondary legislation, regulations, details, as things stand, the Lords does have an absolute veto and can effectively throw out the government's plans. It's hardly ever used, only a handful of times since the Second World War, but crucially was used in that tax credits vote back in October, and it incensed the government, who felt that it was a constitutional outrage. Hence this review from Lord Strathclyde, former Cabinet Minister, and its publication this morning, and a statement from Lady Stoll, the leader of the Commons, leader of the Lords I should say, in the chamber in the last few minutes.
The exceptional was becoming a little less rare. These events put a long-established convention in doubt and raised constitutional questions about the primacy of the elected House, which needed to be examined. So my noble friend was asked to examine whether there was a better way to handle secondary legislation, in order that the elected House of Commons could have the decisive say, just as it does on primary legislation.
So Lady Stoll was concerned that what had happened with tax credits could start happening more and more frequently. This review has taken place, and its central recommendation is that, in essence, what should happen is that the House of Lords should be able to get a say on this so-called secondary legislation, but just one say. It could reject it effectively once, send it back to the House of Commons, but that then would be it. Now it's over to the government to decide what it wants to do. We expect the Prime Minister to respond formally in the new year. Labour think this is a gross overreaction. The expectation is the government will implement this.
OK, Chris, thank you for that. Chris Mason.